Look, if you just focus on the fact that Seattle does now have an NHL team that is finally playing regular season games, things are still pretty awesome right now. Of course, they definitely have not gotten off to the start that we would have liked to see them get off to, and that some of us even cautiously may have expected to see them get off to, but they did just play a 5-game road trip in 8 days to start the season across 3 different time zones and ending in a back-to-back, so there definitely is an argument to be made that they could benefit from a much-needed 3 days rest coming into this first ever homestand. And either way, this is the first time in franchise history that they've gotten off to a slower than expected start. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to some more Kraken R&R. Unfortunately, once again coming off of another Kraken loss, this time 4-2 to the New Jersey Devils. Even though they do make it interesting in the end, they still end up losing this one to a team that really they should be able to beat. Unfortunately, it comes at a rather unfortunate time as far as their schedule is concerned. Before the game can even get started, a couple of hours before puck drop, the Kraken had a couple of big pieces of news coming into this game. The first being that Driedger was going to the IR, which is definitely somewhat unexpected and seemed to kind of come out of nowhere, but it does mean that the Kraken then have to kind of, in an emergency spot, call up Joey Daccord, as, again, Grubauer has played the first 4 games, and you would really not like to have him play those 5 games in 8 days, especially ending on a back-to-back. So Daccord comes up from Charlotte and ends up getting the start in this game for his first start in Kraken history. Unfortunately for Seattle, Vince Dunn, who had been day-to-day and missed the last couple of games, also was back on the roster, but the biggest news of all was that Yanni Gourde was activated from IR and played his first game for the Seattle Kraken. Yes, the same Yanni Gourde that when he was taken in the expansion draft, we were told likely wouldn't play his first game for Seattle until mid to late December. And here we are, still a week away from the end of October, and he's already playing games for Seattle. And yes, of course, just as we expected, Gourde did slot right into the center spot on that first line, with Schwartz and Eberle as the wingers. And as we get into the game, we'll talk about how that ends up going, but as the game starts, early on, we kind of pick up where we left off with the Philadelphia game, in that this already started out fairly chippy between the two teams, with an early hit that Tanev has near the benches, and some rather thin skin from the New Jersey player turns this into a fight, and Tanev's first in a Kraken jersey. Unfortunately for the Kraken though, even with Tanev taking that fight early on to try to get a little bit of energy into the bench, the chippiness was not the only thing that carried over for the Kraken from the Philadelphia game, as they really lacked energy out of the gate and couldn't get anything much going early on. Fortunately, it took the Devils a little while to get anything going as well, but they still do end up getting the better of the shots and chances early on in the first period, and that really maintains its way through the entirety of the period. The good news is that Daccord was definitely up to the task in net, coming right up to the Kraken on short notice, and made some pretty big saves early on. On the other end, it didn't take long for Yanni Gourde to really start to stand out as an offensive presence, especially compared to the rest of the Kraken players at the time. Having a good couple of entrances into the zone and one beautiful backhanded pass from the corner that goes right into open space in front of the net. Unfortunately, there's nobody there and it doesn't turn into a chance for Seattle. And then going back the other way for the Devils, an irresponsible defensive play for the Kraken leads to a 2-on-1 rush for New Jersey. Alexiak trying to do everything he can to block the pass and force the shot, but the pass gets over his stick as he lays out, and there's really nothing Daccord can do about this one, as it would have taken a heck of a save, which he does almost get across, but they still sneak it into the side of the net, and it's 1-0 Devils right out of the gate. And actually, pretty quickly thereafter, the Kraken have a 2-on-1 of their own as a couple of New Jersey players take each other out of the blue line. Unfortunately, another thing that comes over from the Flyers game is that early on, the Kraken passing is, well, to say that it's not on point would be putting it lightly, as here a bad hard-to-handle pass pretty much shuts down this play before it really even gets started for Seattle. And the Devils don't take too long at all to end up back with the puck in their possession in Seattle's end of the ice, get a few more shots on Daccord, who did do a really good job early on of stopping pucks and not allowing rebounds, but eventually one of these shots he isn't able to handle the rebound. It goes right to the stick of Severson, who puts it in, making it 2-1 Devils. Again, not too far into the game, as the Kraken have a multi-goal deficit once again, fairly early on in a first period. And at this point, it really looked like things could get out of hand pretty quickly in this one, with the Kraken playing more of that sloppy, irresponsible at both ends of the ice play that got them in that big hole in Philadelphia. Again, they're somewhat bailed out by Daccord being absolutely on his game here, and also the Devils not being quite as able to jump on as many of the mistakes as the Flyers were in the previous game. And even making some mistakes of their own, one of which leading to Eberle having a free breakaway late in the first period, but the save is made on this one, and Eberle still can't get on the board for the Kraken. Seattle does get on the power play here with 4 minutes left in the period, but just like everything else, the power play looks just like it did in Philadelphia, and nothing like how it did really in the first 3 games, so they don't really get anything going, and hardly any chances come of it, with only 1 shot on the power play as a whole. And coming out of that failed power play, we have what very well could turn into one of the bigger storylines coming out of this game, with Lauzon riding Hughes taking the puck into the defensive end, hard into the boards and laying a big hit that has Hughes falling awkwardly to the ice on his shoulder, and he would not end up returning to the game. And no penalty is called, as this was a clean hit from Lauzon, just kind of a big, awkward hit that unfortunately leads to potential injury from Hughes. Now, of course, the crowd and New Jersey bench don't like it, as Hughes is one of their young stars, and they were sure to make that known as this game would go on. New Jersey, however, does end up getting on the power play in the final minute of the first period, with Larson getting caught again for cross-checking, and this is already the second one in a couple of games for him, with both of them definitely being the type of thing where you can tell that this is something that he's used to being able to get away with, but with this more strict enforcement of that cross-checking rule once again, they've caught him now a couple of times. And New Jersey does have pretty good setup, but are being held to the outsides with their shots until the very end of the period, as a pass straight to the middle ends up finding a New Jersey stick and gets into the net to make it 3-0 Devils at the buzzer. But wait, no, they end up going to review, and it turns out the puck had not crossed the line. It had gotten past Daccord, but had not crossed the line by the time the clock hit 0-0, and the goal comes off the board, and the Kraken barely dodge a bullet here, and we go to the first intermission, down just 2-0. As we start the second period, the Kraken do look quite a bit better out of the gates, are able to kill off the remainder of that power play for the Devils, and actually ended up controlling the puck for the majority of the rest of that time, and getting on an early 2-on-1 breakaway, which turns on to a 3-on-2. Gourde makes a nice pass to Gio with open ice, and he just can't quite get the shot on goal, and we do still stay at 2-0 Devils. For the Devils, they're able to take care of their main piece of business early on in the second period by exacting at least some kind of revenge on Lauzon for his hit on Hughes by getting in a fight with him, though again, Lauzon definitely gets the better of this one. As the period goes on, although play is much more back and forth and the Kraken do look to be playing better, the Devils are getting more shots on net, still easily winning that battle, and Daccord makes a highlight reel save with his toe, barely keeping one out of the net. The puck ends up going the other way, a shot, a rebound, and Bernier answers with a very nice save of his own, robbing an empty net shot from a Kraken player who, I think at this point when I say there's an empty front of the net shot that a Kraken player has and they end up getting robbed, you can probably guess who that was. Yeah, it's Eberle again, as this guy just cannot catch a break early on in the season, with again another game and another chance in front of the net with a rebound that just gets robbed away from him as he can't get this one into the net. And I mean, obviously there's a ton of skill that goes into the game of hockey, but by the nature of the sport, there's also a fair amount of luck, and at this point in the season, Eberle clearly has absolutely none of it. The Kraken do end up on the power play again, though, as Appleton draws a penalty, and while they do get things a little bit more well set up on this power play, they just really can't get any good shots off again. And then towards the end of it, another penalty gets drawn in. For 13 seconds, the Kraken have 5-on-3. Now, 13 seconds is not a whole lot of time, so the Devils do escape that one and do actually end up even killing off the rest of that second Kraken power play. However, coming off of the back half of that second power play, the Kraken at this point absolutely have the entirety of the momentum of the game, and Larson gets a shot off on goal. A rebound finally finds a Kraken stick in front of the net. It's Sheahan, and he buries this one to cut the deficit in half. It's 2-1 Devils. And I will say this, while in many aspects, especially in the last two games, the Kraken have not played well enough to end up coming out with the win, there is something to be said that for the most part, the puck luck has also definitely been favoring the other teams, especially with bounces in front of the net seeming to always find opposing sticks on rebounds, where the Kraken just have not been able to pick up the rebounds like their opponents have. This one, though, again does get picked up, and finally one goes in. But just as things really start to be swinging in the Kraken's favor, a really iffy penalty on Susi leads to a Devils power play, which does help them regain a little bit of that momentum. And even though the penalty kill does absolutely again do its job, only allowing one shot, which was a decent chance, but Daccord makes a nice save. Unfortunately, the momentum has somewhat evened out at this point, and the Devils are able to maintain that swing in momentum, get set up in the Kraken defensive zone, and a nice tic-tac-toe passing play has the puck work its way from the blue line all the way to the front of the net, crossing back and forth, and finally does get behind Daccord and into the net to once again give the Devils a 2-goal lead. It's 3-1. And to me with this one, the most frustrating part about this goal wasn't even necessarily that the defense was bad on it, although in spite of them having been on the ice for probably a bit too long and being tired, they really could have played quite a bit better to not allow this to be as easy as it looked. The most frustrating part of it was that this was the type of passing play that we just have not seen from the Kraken throughout the entire Philadelphia game and really up to this point in the game. The Kraken had some nice passes, a few of them from Yanni Gourde already at this point in the game, just nothing was going stick to stick for Seattle, as it was a lot of either passes completely missing their mark, going to nobody when there maybe should have been someone there, or going into the feet of the player that they were aimed at. Nothing like this play where it was pretty much tape to tape to tape and into the net. But still, to Daccord's credit, even with now a second goal getting past him that was really more on the defense than it was on him, he continued to stand tall in the net and play incredibly for Seattle, really again throughout the rest of this game. And shortly after that third goal, had a really nice stick check that ends up potentially saving a fourth goal from the Devils. And then as the second period's winding down, Seattle starts to get a little bit of that momentum back, and it's Wennberg coming into the offensive zone going the other way, takes a quick look for a pass, and then wrists a beautiful shot that whistles past Bernier and into the net to make it 2-3 Kraken. Until it gets challenged for offsides by the Devils, and sure enough, the Kraken do have a guy that just sneaks over the blue line before Wennberg brings the puck into the zone, and a quick review reveals that the game is going to stay 3-1. And shortly thereafter, a somewhat dirty high hit to the head of Geekie away from the play leads to Donato coming to his defense and getting right into a fight on the guy who laid the hit. Now, Donato does probably earn the misconduct and instigator penalty for that fight, as he definitely does go into this one full head of steam, causing the fight to happen. But the hit on Geekie absolutely was also a missed call, and again, while Donato earned his penalty, this probably should not have turned into a power play for the Devils, but the hit on Geekie is missed, the Devils get a power play. Again, fortunately, the Kraken penalty kill is up to the task, and it doesn't lead to anything to close out the period. In the third period, it really takes a long time for either team to get much of anything going, as there's a lot of whistles for offsides and icings, and the flow of play just really doesn't get established through the first half, and it is a fairly uneventful third period until we get into the second half of it and less than 10 minutes left. At which point, it does have to be said that even with all those interruptions, the Kraken are playing much better defensively than we had seen them play in the previous 5 periods of hockey, having, at this point in the period, only allowed 2 shots on net after having allowed 15 and 14 in the 2 periods previous. But then finally, as we get into the back half of the third period, Seattle's able to establish a little bit of momentum, and with 7 minutes left, they draw a penalty to go on the power play. And then right off the face-off to start that power play, they draw another one, and it's 5-on-3 for just about 2 minutes, though it would not take them that long. Now, it does take, at the time especially, a very frustratingly long time for the Kraken to finally start to get something set up and into the offensive zone on 5-on-3, but they finally do get in there, do a lot of passing the puck around, a couple of shots that get rebounded out, picked right up by the Kraken, though they don't get follow-up shots off on those, and eventually it's McCann who whiffs on one but picks the puck right back up, does a quick 360, and then just shoots an absolute laser into the back of the net, and it's 3-2 Kraken. And although this one does pretty much just go in because of the quality of McCann's shot, Gourde is one of the 2 players with an assist on it and picks up his first point in a Kraken uniform. Unfortunately, the Devils are able to kill off the rest of this penalty, and the rest of the third period ends up going pretty back and forth. The Kraken do get a few more chances, but can't bury anything, and with a minute and a half left, finally they pull Daccord, but with 19 seconds left, the Devils find the empty net, and it becomes 4-2 New Jersey, where it would finish. So with this game in particular, the Kraken do play better and better as this game goes on, but really just dug themselves in too much of a hole with that first period that looked a lot like the Philadelphia game, with sloppy defensive play allowing way too many shots and good scoring chances for the Devils, not getting to rebounds, and on the other end, passing was just about as uncrisp or soggy, I guess you could call it, as it possibly could be, with really nothing connecting tape to tape particularly solidly when it needed to. In the second period, it was a lot more back and forth. They were definitely starting to clean things up, still allowing way too many shots, but keeping them much more to the outside and limiting the rebound opportunities, unlike what they were doing before. So even though the numbers don't look great, it still was an improvement, I think, pretty clearly. And on the offensive end, obviously we're creating more opportunities there as well. In the third period, they absolutely looked like the better team on both ends of the ice, but just weren't able to create enough opportunities offensively to complete the comeback and at least send this one into overtime, if not taking the lead in that period. And a lot of that was driven by that first line and Yanni Gourde, who looked absolutely fantastic in his Kraken debut. I mean, I don't know how much of it might have been due to the fact that this was his first game of the season, so you definitely had the freshest legs of anybody on that bench, but he clearly stood out, especially on the offensive end, but even on the back check compared to anybody else the Kraken put on the ice. I mean, I will say that Tanev did have a couple of moments again, and Eberle continues to put himself in positions in front of the net to get pucks into the net, but just can't seem to get it across that line for whatever reason. But it still was clearly Yanni Gourde head and shoulders above everyone else, which is probably not something you'll hear too often, but at least by his performance, that was certainly the case here. Which really has to make you wonder if he looks that much better than anybody else on the Kraken lineup, and that continues to be the case throughout the season. How stacked was that Lightning team for the last couple of years that this guy was on the third line and really deserved to be there? For the team as a whole, they do end up finishing this road trip I'll just say it, disappointing 1-3-1. I mean, yes, they do at least get that first win, but I think we were expecting a lot more out of this road trip, especially with how the schedule looked with the couple of teams that they had on it. Of course, losing to both Columbus and now New Jersey that are both definitely beatable teams. That said, especially with how these last couple of games played out and that coming after they seemed to have been improving from a somewhat sloppy start to the Vegas game and then that big comeback, I think there definitely is something to be said about fatigue setting in for this back-to-back after again having played 5 games in 8 days across 3 different time zones on a road trip to start the season, with the Kraken being the first team in the NHL to have played 5 games already. So there definitely is a reason that this team looked tired, and they definitely played tired in these last couple games. Now, obviously, even if that is the case, the amount of sloppy play that they had in at least 4 of the last 6 periods is just not acceptable, and especially with a long season still ahead and a condensed schedule because of the Olympic break in February, they're gonna have to figure out how to get in enough condition that they aren't this tired after a few games in a row that they might not be used to over the course of their careers. And they definitely are capable of bouncing back and will get 3 days to rest in order to make that happen on this homestand. Plus, I do also think there is something to be said for the fact that they are still definitely getting used to each other, and that's just something that's going to take a month or two for them fully to get into the flow of playing with basically a brand new team of guys, which definitely could contribute to especially the less than crisp passing that we saw throughout the road trip, really, but especially in these last 2 games. Now, if they get off to a similar start in that first home game against Vancouver on Saturday, as they did in this one, or especially in Philadelphia, then I think there certainly is some reason to be concerned about how these first couple of months are going to go for the Kraken, especially considering that that building is going to be absolutely rocking regardless of what happens. The thought that I want to end this road trip on, though, is that, especially for you newer fans, while again, this is definitely not the start that we wanted to see the Kraken get off to with a 1-3-1 record with some beatable teams in those first 5 games, it's definitely not something to freak out about, as this is a long season and we're just 5 games into 82 games. And just looking around the league, the Buffalo Sabres, who are expected to be one of the 2 worst teams in the entire NHL by a pretty safe margin, starting off their season 3-0, while the Canadiens, who were just in the Stanley Cup Finals, are starting off their season 0-4 and really not looking that competitive in just about any of those games. Plus, for what it's worth, well, with this game specifically, losing to a team like New Jersey is disappointing. When it comes to the team that Seattle will be seeing on Saturday in their cross-border rival, the Canucks, well, in the very same night, they lost to those Buffalo Sabres. So, it could be worse. Anyway, at this point, I think we will bring an end to this one. So if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts with this game or the road trip as a whole down in the comments section. But until next time, stay safe out there and go Kraken.